Hello, everyone. My name is Luke Holden. Welcome back to the latest edition of the No Holding Back podcast. Currently sitting here with my dad, Ben Holden. How are you doing today?
Good, Luke. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So last night, as everyone I'm sure knows,
Yeah.
Last Dance episodes 3 and 4 were on ESPN. If you haven't checked those out yet, they're on ESPN Plus, and I heard they're on Hulu now as well.
Okay.
So if you have a Hulu account, be sure to check those out. But what were your thoughts on both the episodes last night?
My thoughts were this.
Fair enough. Obviously,
No.
we're from the Detroit area, but
We are compelling again and very interesting. I did not want to stop watching it. I wanted to keep watching it. I could have watched the final, what are we down to, 6 episodes now?
Yeah, yep.
I mean, just incredible television, I thought. And, the behind-the-scenes access they had. Adam Silver was in charge back then of the broadcasting and marketing of the NBA, and it was all put into agreement when he was in that spot that they let the Bulls have the cameras follow him, and what a magical thing we get to see now.
Yeah, definitely. It's been really great to have the series, especially with everyone in quarantine and not really able to do a whole lot. So Sunday nights have definitely been something to look forward to for sure. And obviously episodes 5 and 6 are next Sunday, of course.
It reminds me, I'm dating myself, but it reminds me when I was a little kid under 10. When Disney was on, I had to watch Disney with my grandpa Holden. So It was must-see TV, man. It really was, and this has become that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the first thing that we can kind of talk about here is obviously episode 3 was pretty much focused around Dennis Rodman.
Yep.
A lot of interesting stuff in there. Obviously, he started his NBA career with the Pistons. And I mean, he had a great career here, won a few championships, then went on to San Antonio for a bit after that, and then obviously came to the Bulls later and won more championships with them. So just kind of what are your thoughts on some of the things that stood out to you about Dennis Rodman in episode 3?
Well, I mean, let's start with the 27th pick in the 86 draft. He played at Southeast Oklahoma State. So you and I talked about this last week, and I know it had a bit of an impact on you in a couple of different ways.
Yeah.
Scottie Pippen went to a small school like that, an NAIA school, and nobody knew who he was. Obviously, the Pistons did their homework, and I can't name a better rebounder in the history of the game. I think the number I saw last night was he had 159 20-plus rebound games.
Yeah.
He was a game changer.
Yeah, he definitely
was a game changer, and he said, "I don't think they win again without me."
Yeah,
Rodman speaking, and he just revolutionized the way the game is played. He played it hard. He played it hard nosed. He just had a knack for getting the basketball. And for not being a 7-foot guy. He was he guarded the big guys. He guarded Kareem. He guarded Parrish. Whoever he had to guard. I mean, he was a force at that spot and a major piece for both the Pistons and for the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. And one thing that I thought was interesting in the documentary, you see him kind of go through his, philosophy when he's trying to get a rebound. He's talking about how, if Magic's shooting, it's going to spin less than Larry Bird, and it's going to bounce this way if it hits off this part of the rim, and just, his mind and how he thinks when, the ball's, released on a shot and how he's going to know exactly where the rebound goes and how he's going to get it. So
yeah, he had it down to a science. He really did. And to your point, it was that to me is scientific. You study, you're a pro, you do I mean, the Bulls said, when he was there, I mean, he was everything as advertised. He didn't slack. I mean, they were talking about the game where, Phil Jackson had him do, and nobody could catch him, run around the gym. And, he was a great athlete. He was a freak of nature in that way. He was a freak in a lot of ways.
Yes.
But, to each their own. And, I always liked him when he played here.
Yeah.
I always had an affection for him because of what he did. I texted you last night, to use a hockey term. I said he would have been a great fourth-line plumber. He did everything. He did all the little things that guys weren't willing to do. He'd sacrifice his body. He'd take a guy down. He'd take Jordan down, whatever he had to do, and I love the Worm. I loved him when he played here.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a great player. One thing that I think, at least for my generation, I feel like sometimes we tend to forget that Dennis Rodman had played in Detroit and started in Detroit.
Yeah.
And I think partially that's due to the fact that, they said in the documentary a little bit, he was just a very introverted, shy, pretty normal kind of guy, didn't really know much about the world. And then when you send him to San Antonio, he turns into, dyeing his hair, wearing the earrings and the nose rings and all that kind of stuff. And he turns into a completely different guy. And I think that's the Dennis Rodman that a lot of people remember. But I think it's kind of a shame because I wish more people could remember the Detroit Pistons, Dennis Rodman and how good of a player he was. And even, throughout the documentary, just a lot of people saying, he's one of the best on-ball defenders to ever play in the NBA.
Yeah.
Not only was he a great rebounder, but he could guard anybody. I mean, you said it too. He could guard guys, who were, Steph Curry height 6'3", 6'4", to guys who were 7'1", 7'2". So I think for my generation, I hope that kind of makes some more people realize that he did play in Detroit. It wasn't just a thing that, was in the fantasy written book or something like that. It really did happen, and he won championships here too.
He did. Now, I got to ask you, what did you think when they started showing him and all the wild apparel he used to wear, the hats and the dress, and what did you think of that? Now, this is, again, Luke's going to be 19 a week from today, so an 18-year-old to get – I'm so glad that you're watching these and getting a true appreciation of Jordan and how great he was and, Piston fan, Laker fan, whatever you are.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, you have to admit how great he was.
Definitely.
For me, if you put a Mount Rushmore of the four major sports, Jordan's on it for basketball, Gretzky's on it for hockey, baseball and football, to me, those are debates that could go on for hours.
Yeah.
But I think for the NBA, he's the Mount Rushmore of the NBA.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, this has kind of made me realize, obviously I've been able to grow up and watch LeBron's career and all the things he's done.
Yeah.
It's made me realize that, not to say that the comparison and the debates are dead and they're going to be over, but Jordan is he's not comparable at all to LeBron, and vice versa. Doug Collins even said it in the documentary. He won the MVP of the league, the MVP of the All-Star game, the dunk contest, and the Defensive Player of the Year in 1 year. That was Doug Collins' first year of coaching, I believe.
Yeah.
Or first year of coaching
Jordan.
Michael, yeah.
Yeah.
And, I don't think LeBron's never even won Defensive Player of the Year.
Right.
So, they're just two completely uncomparable guys. I believe Mike Malone, who's currently the head coach of the Denver Nuggets, I believe he was an assistant with LeBron when he was at the Heat. And, he even said, after the first two episodes, he said, LeBron just doesn't have that killer instinct like Kobe and Jordan do. And it's very true. And I think, LeBron's more comparable to a point forward like Scottie Pippen than he is to a pure scorer like Jordan was. So
do you think that's because – like, I'm going back to LeBron's days at Akron, St. Mary, St. Vincent. Obviously, you never saw him play. You were born in 01.
Yeah.
Do you think that's because he depended on his teammates more?
Yeah.
Or do you think that's his makeup?
I think that's just how he is. That's just the kind of player he is. He's always looked to include his teammates. The reason he left Cleveland to go to Miami was because he didn't have a team around him to play with.
Right.
And he developed, the super team. Didn't win as many championships as I think he should have with Miami, in my opinion. But, and then when he came back to Cleveland, he had guys like Kyrie Irving. They'd got Kevin Love in free agency, and he had a team around him that he could play with. He's always needed a team, like with them trading for Anthony Davis in LA and all those kinds of things. I think he's always been that kind of point forward playmaker kind of guy, not really so much the, I'm going to eat your whole team alive and I don't care what happens to you. I'm going to win and drop 60 on you no matter what. Right. That's something
Jordan.
Yeah, that's something that you would hear Michael Jordan say or Kobe Bryant say for that matter too, because they're the most similar comparable guys I think in recent NBA history, those two. So.
Yeah. Well, continuing on here, talking Last Dance episodes 3 and 4 here on this installment of No Holding Back, and recognize the picture back there.
Yeah, I do.
Right? I'm trying to be a weather person here.
Yeah.
I had to bring that on. That was in my garage for years. In my my house is a man cave. In case you haven't figured that out yet, those that are watching, memorabilia everywhere. I had that. I'm like, I gotta get that inside on the set, man. And we're gonna get to that when they won their first title. But pick up where you'd like to, and we'll continue on here talking. And we're gonna get into a little bit of debating here too, which I love.
Yeah. So. Kind of going back to Dennis Rodman a little bit, obviously, San Antonio is kind of when he started to flourish and become the guy he was, and one thing that kind of stuck with me is he said, I wasn't the kind of player I was in the NBA because of my college. I was the kind of player I was in the NBA because I played with the Pistons.
Yeah.
And that's something I think is important. He knows, kind of where he came from and his background. He remembers that. And I think that's an important thing because I think sometimes people and players forget those kinds of things.
He was a scorer in college.
Yeah,
20 points a game, 20 plus a game.
Yeah, I think he said his first year he averaged 27. I want to say something like that.
Yeah,
so I mean he was a scorer. He was he
did it all.
Yeah, he was the top player on their college team, but
which was nicknamed the Savages. Perfect name, I thought, for Rodman.
Definitely,
it's the way he played.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And I think it's so interesting to hear about I want to take a vacation.
Oh my gosh.
And
I need 48 hours.
Yeah, and I laugh at what
that was great.
I laugh at what Michael Jordan said. Where he's like, "Oh man, he's out here saying a vacation." He's like, "I need a vacation," things like that.
Yeah.
And you would think, out of all the guys that did need a vacation, it would have been Jordan.
Right.
And I think it's interesting the relationship that Phil Jackson and Dennis Rodman had with each other and how really similar of people they were.
Yeah, they really were. I mean, from the spiritual side of them, the Native American stuff that Phil Jackson was talking about,
yep.
and you've been educated by me.
Yeah.
What do you think of when you think of North Dakota?
I mean,
what's the first thing you think of?
Yeah, well, the Fighting Sioux, of course.
Right, you think of North Dakota hockey.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't realize Phil Jackson went to North Dakota.
Yeah, he did.
There were a lot of people that learned that last night, and
yep.
They were incredibly. I thought they were incredibly similar. They were they were both somewhat introverted.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason, there are several layers to why it worked with Rodman,
mm-hmm.
but I think one of the biggest reasons was because of his relationship and the similarity that the similarities that he and Phil Jackson had, whether it was the way they played, the way they carried themselves, the way they were off the court. I mean, I was blown away by that. I had no idea about that, Luke.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people really did. They kind of said it in the documentary. Phil Jackson was kind of a weird dude too.
Yeah,
he was a quirky guy. He wasn't really, wasn't the kind of normal average, NBA head coach for the time. And I think that was something that definitely did help Dennis Rodman be the player he was in Chicago. And, Rodman said it himself, if it wasn't for me, that they wouldn't have won those championships. So,
I agree with that. I do, because you got to have all the pieces. And, he had a coach that understood him.
Yep, definitely.
And obviously Michael Jordan and the rest of them. I mean, it started with Jordan, obviously. And it probably ended with Jordan.
Yep.
In terms of that. But, to have that coach that was so similar in so many ways, that was incredible. I thought that was really fascinating. There were a lot of fascinating layers to it last night.
Yes.
But to me, that was one of the most fascinating layers. I really thought that was interesting. And, he could confide in him. He could talk to him. He could understand where Rodman's head was. And like you said, after he went to San Antonio, I don't think anybody knew where Dennis Rodman's head was, really, for the most part. He was all over the map.
Yeah, definitely. And then to go into the vacation to Vegas. So he had 48 hours.
He ain't coming back.
That did not happen. He didn't fulfill that 48 hours. He was out in Vegas for a while. Obviously they had, it was
with Carmen Electra.
Yes, it was being covered all over.
Yep.
He was partying, drinking, doing all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And one thing that I think is interesting in the documentary, they said, Jordan flew out to Vegas to get him, and today, I believe it's the director
came out,
and he said that's not the case. It was just Dennis Rodman had a place in Chicago right across from United Center that Jordan had came to tell him to, let's go to practice.
Right. So, he came back, but he was still late when he came back, and he basically had a crash pad. It's a term used, a lot in the airline industry. You have a crash pad. A lot of people stay in there, and.
Yep.
And that was basically what he had, like Luke said. So Jordan didn't fly to Vegas. Like, I was under the impression that he did.
I thought so too.
The way it was portrayed,
exactly.
It just seemed like, okay, well, Jordan flew to Vegas to get his teammate.
Yeah.
But like you said, that came out. I saw that in a Sports Illustrated story earlier today.
Yeah, and I mean, whether or not he would have gone to Vegas, I still think he would have done that. Obviously, everyone knows Michael Jordan. His philosophy was win.
Yep.
I think I can't remember who the assistant was with Doug Collins, but he came up with the idea of triangle basketball and things like that.
It's Tex Winter when he came in with Phil.
Tex Winter, and I remember Jordan saying, Tex Winter said, hey, well, there's no I in team, but Jordan says, well, there's an I in win.
Yep.
Back, before Dennis Rodman had gotten there and the triangle offense and Phil Jackson, all those things. Because the difference with Phil Jackson and Doug Collins was all about making Jordan the centerpiece, being the all-star that he was, letting him do what he wants, dropping 60 every night whenever he wanted to.
Right.
Where Phil Jackson had kind of came to Jordan and said, if you want to make this work and you want to win championships, you got to listen to me, you got to sacrifice for the team, and you got to make everybody else around you better.
And that, it's very true. And that I said to you before we sat down here and started recording this, it reminds me of, for those that are hockey fans, the Detroit Red Wings, before they won with Steve Yzerman and Fedorov and Shanahan and all the crew they had, Scotty Bowman basically went to Steve Yzerman and said, you have to change the way that you play.
Yeah.
And if you do it, everybody else will follow. I mean, before Bowman got there, it was similar to Jordan.
Yep.
Jordan would score. You've said it a few times, scoring 60, whatever, 61, 69, whatever he dropped.
Yeah.
Steve Yzerman was putting up 140, 150 points a season.
Yeah.
And when he changed his game, what happened?
They started winning.
They started to win, just like the Bulls did.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, I think that was definitely a pretty interesting thing to see.
It was.
And we didn't really kind of get the full story as to why Doug Collins had left, I feel like. He
just said he had a sense.
Yeah, that's
all he said.
Yeah, he's like, I just had a feeling that, that Phil Jackson was the next one, and they asked, well, what were your thoughts? And he's like, I just, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty interesting how that went down. Obviously, Phil Jackson is probably one of the greatest coaches in basketball history, I would say. In sports history, basketball history. I would loop him in, with other basketball coaches like Greg Popovich.
Red Auerbach.
Yep.
Casey Jones.
Yeah. I mean, Phil Jackson is one of the greatest coaches to ever coach. He's gotten to coach some of the greatest players to ever play.
Yes.
And I think that's definitely a pretty big thing. So
yeah, no doubt about it. And I love what back to the vacation deal. And Jordan said, "No way that dude's coming back. No way."
Yep.
And then your guy, Steve Kerr, said they gave him a lot of rope. Like I'm looking at notes here in case anyone's wondering. I took some notes last night watching it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say too, Luke, before we get back on track, in the 4 episodes we've seen, think of the things that the Bull, like, I didn't realize this. I didn't grow up a Bulls fan. I grew up a Jordan fan.
Yeah.
Think of the moves, and you talked about replacing Doug Collins with Phil Jackson, who was one of the assistants. Then, that not only that is bold, but, in the last year, as we've learned, they told him the last dance, hence the title. This is your last year.
Yeah.
They already had 5 rings.
I know.
I mean, you do that today, I wouldn't even begin to know what would happen to a GM, how much he would get fried for that.
Oh, yeah. Well, not only would you get fried for it, but I feel like you would also risk your job.
Absolutely.
Because to me, and I was even having this conversation, I was watching this with my mom last night, I said, we were both like, why would you want to rebuild your team? Why would you want to stop all this winning? And I mean, if they would have kept the Bulls together, they probably could have won another 3-peat.
Never know. They could have.
I mean, who's to say that they wouldn't have?
Yeah.
And just to think that Jerry Krause, and I mean, obviously you have to give Jerry Krause a lot of credit for what he did. He brought in Jordan, he brought in Pippen, brought in Phil Jackson. He didn't really want to bring in Rodman, but he did anyways.
I just looked down, and the one note I had, I wrote, Phil and Rodman met. Krause, no way.
Yes.
No way.
Yep. And he didn't really want either of those guys at the time.
No.
And I think it's interesting how they ended up, joining the team, and it worked out. But, you say you have a chance to win a second 3-peat, and then you say, hey, this is the last season. Phil Jackson's not coming back. Michael Jordan's got to play somewhere else if he wants to play next year.
And he said he was.
Yeah. I mean, and then.
And he did.
Exactly. And it's a very it's a really interesting thing that I think nowadays, if that happened, you'd probably lose your job as a general manager if you said, I want to break up the dynasty and rebuild the team.
Right. What if your boy Bob Myers did that 2 years ago?
I personally, I wouldn't have been too happy.
No.
I mean, you're getting rid of the greatest shooting and probably the greatest backcourt to ever play in the NBA.
You're talking shooting guys in the backcourt.
Yeah, shooting backcourt.
Yeah.
I would still say, they're definitely arguable as one of the best all-time backcourts as well.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
But I mean, if the Warriors did that, they wouldn't have any. They would have one championship, and that would be it.
Right. Or imagine the Lakers doing that. Back in the day. You know, when Magic and Worthy and Kareem and
exactly.
The list of players they had.
Yep.
It was pretty interesting. Where are we going next, young man?
Yeah. So I think the next thing I think that was a pretty centerpiece of last night was obviously the Bad Boys and
89
and the rivalry between Jordan and all that, and it was definitely a very interesting thing to hear about, to witness. Obviously, to hear Isaiah Thomas and all the things he had to say, John Sally. What are some of your thoughts on all that?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing, Jordan. I hated him then. I hate him today.
Yeah. Yep.
And that really stood out to me. And they did everything they could do to physically hurt him.
Yeah.
Everything they could do to hurt him.
Yep.
That's how they felt it was best to defend him.
Yeah.
Everything, keep him out. And if he comes in, he's on his ass.
Yeah.
And that's the way they played, man. It was just, it would never fly today.
No.
The NBA was a different era then.
It was.
The thing that people forget is the Pistons had to go through the Celtics and the Lakers.
Yes.
I mean, the Bulls had to go through the Pistons, obviously. It took them 3 years to finally get through.
Yeah.
But without the Detroit Pistons, I mean, the Bulls could have, done what they've done or done what they did, but I don't think they do it without the Pistons, because every great team has to get through the great team that's there.
Exactly.
You got to knock them off the pedestal.
Yep.
And the Pistons did it to Boston. They finally got through. They threw a wrench in the NBA for a couple of years there, winning back-to-backs.
Yeah.
And then the Bulls got it, and they took the baton, and they won, 6 of the next 8.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yep. So, I mean, I think, they said it. A lot of the Pistons players said it. They had to go through us to be as great as they were. And one thing, I believe it was 91 when they finally beat them, the Bulls.
It was 91, yeah.
They were even saying, that was, this is, skinny little Michael isn't so skinny anymore.
Yeah.
And, those guys all put on weight. They had their summer workout training regimen, which
Yep.
is now a thing for every NBA team.
You're
they
right.
train year round.
Yep.
They're working out all the time, always in the gym, getting shots up. I think you can kind of thank the Bulls for that one, for getting those guys into those summer workouts, because no one before then had ever done that.
No.
They were the first team to do it. They were the first team to say, we need to do this to win. And I think it's pretty cool to see Jordan kind of take that, because he wasn't really too big on lifting weights. He kind of just let his game take care of it. But, his thought too was, well, now that I'm putting on more weight, I can throw my weight around a little bit more and kind of, be more physical and things like that. Obviously that helped him get through the Pistons. But one thing I think you have to talk about is the handshake.
Oh boy.
I think for me personally, and I know a lot of Detroit people are probably going to hate me when I say this, but I'm on the side of the Bulls on this one. I understand that the Celtics didn't shake, the Pistons' hands at all.
McHale came out.
Kevin McHale, but even then, you see the footage. He didn't really come out. He was walking away too.
Right.
And Isaiah Thomas kind of got to him before he could leave. So obviously you have that, but for me, there at some point you have to understand that there's always going to be a better team eventually. You can't be on top forever as much as you want to be. There's always going to be a better team. There's always going to be a team that's going to come along and beat you, and I feel like you have to respect that. You can't just say, like Bill Laimbeer saying, they're just a bunch of crybabies and we didn't want to talk to them and all that kind of stuff. And I understand that from a competitive point, but you have to take into account, something I've learned being an athlete since I was a kid, sportsmanship. You got to shake people's hands. You got to say good game. Even though it could be the hardest thing in the world, you still have to do it. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a Michigan guy through and through, born and raised here, and, support the teams and except the Lions.
Yeah.
But at least until Barry Sanders retired, I did.
Yeah.
But, you can look at it that way, and certainly, you can take the other side of it. I mean, to me, that's the way it was. That's the way it was. I mean, was it classy? Was it classless? Yeah, it probably was.
Yeah.
And, even Isaiah Thomas came out earlier today saying, not quoting him here, but, they would have done things differently.
Yeah.
John Sally last night was talking about how he went to Chuck Daly and said, I want to be in the game.
Yeah.
He knew.
Yep.
He ended up winning a championship with the Bulls.
Exactly.
And the Lakers.
Yeah.
And so, he knew that it was the right thing to do. And Lambert's still adamant about it. He's like, I was tired of their whining. I wasn't shaking their hands.
Yeah.
I mean, today it's unacceptable.
Oh yeah.
Today you're crucified if you don't do that. I think back to 2009 when the Penguins won the Cup here, back-to-back years they played the Red Wings. Sidney Crosby didn't go through the handshake line.
Yeah.
Some forget that, some don't. I don't. I think that's the end of a series. I guess this is my true feeling. The end of a series, you go through the handshake line.
Yeah.
So Piston fan or not, I mean, at the time, it was like, yeah, okay, whatever. It is what it is, man. The heck with them. I don't care about them. They just beat us.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I would be on your side of it. And, yeah, it was something they should have done.
Yep.
And in the end, I think it ultimately kept Isaiah Thomas off the Dream Team the next year.
Yeah.
A couple years later.
No, it definitely did. And I think that's something that they're going to kind of get into more in episodes 5 and 6.
Yeah.
We're also going to see a little bit of Kobe and MJ, which I'm looking forward to that. I think everyone, who's a basketball fan is going to be looking forward to seeing Froby as he's been nicknamed. And to see him, back in his early days with Shaquille O'Neal and those great Laker teams, of course. But it is definitely an interesting thing. Isaiah Thomas was not on that Dream Team,
right?
And a lot of people think that he should have been, but when you got a guy like Michael Jordan, who's the best player,
a lot of power,
best player to ever play, and the best player at the time, he can say what he wants about who's going to be on a team and who's not going to be on a team.
Yeah.
So,
and he said, looking back, he thinks everyone would make a different decision, and he said, "I paid a heavy price."
Yeah,
and he knows that, but you can't change it.
Right.
It's just something. It's a great talking point. It's a debate. Some are going to be on the side of, the heck with those jerks. They shouldn't have shook their hands, and I like we both said, we think they should have, and but we can't go back and change it. It's just something fun to talk about now, and the hatred that Michael Jordan had and still has was very clear,
definitely,
about the Pistons. But again, without the Pistons, I don't know if the Bulls completely became what they ended up being.
Yeah.
I don't think they do. I think they win.
Yes.
But I don't know that they win 6 and then they win 6 out of 8. I just don't.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that for sure. And I think to touch on the first championship, they go on, they're playing the Lakers. You got Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
Worthy,
James
AC Green, Byron Scott.
Yep.
Love those teams, man.
All those great players.
Yep.
And one thing that stuck out to me that, I think isn't as emphasized in today's NBA just because of the scoring output and how guys can shoot the ball from half court and still make shots. I mean, that's unguardable. How do you guard Stephen Curry? But that's a conversation for another day.
Yep.
But, one thing that I think is interesting, Scottie Pippen, he picks up, Magic Johnson from full court. Not at half court. He doesn't play a half court set, picks him up from full court that entire series. I think if Scottie Pippen doesn't do that, they don't win. That's my opinion, because they even said, that was the first time that they really got to see Magic Johnson in championship basketball in crunch time.
Yeah.
They didn't know what to do. They were like, man, how do we beat this guy? He's making all these flashy passes. He's, running through our team, doing all these crazy things. And obviously all the other guys that, helped the Lakers win some of those championships. And, they were starstruck, in the first game. And I think that's definitely an interesting thing. But one thing that I think is interesting is, after the Bulls had won, the Lakers and the Bulls kind of crossed paths, and, you see that picture of Jordan kind of going in the arms of Magic Johnson.
Yep.
And, Magic said, he started breaking down and crying in tears, and I think that's something that really stuck out to me, just because he finally got to win, but he got to beat one of the greatest teams of the era and probably one of the greatest teams of all time, along with Chicago and their legacy that was soon to come. So.
Yeah. And then, to add to that, you heard guys talking, as Jordan's former teammates, like they never had seen that emotional side of him. All they saw was, the guy that was hell-bent on winning, did not take losing at all. Yep. And just, he was just that ultimate competitor, the ultimate alpha male long before, like kind of like the commercial with Kenny Mayne, long before we knew what lit was.
Yeah.
Long before we knew what an alpha male was.
Yep.
Jordan's the ultimate. So it was cool to see that. And, that started to kind of send the Lakers, down. And obviously the torch had been passed. It was theirs. And, we saw them get that first one in 91 against them. And they made pretty quick work of them, too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was 4-1 the series.
Yeah.
It was pretty quickly done. Obviously, episodes 5 and 6 are going to be pretty interesting for anyone that didn't see the teaser. Kind of talking a little bit about how the media started to get more involved in free agency and kind of splitting the team up. There's some talk that Horace Grant had said some things to the media that he shouldn't have. That kind of split the team a little bit. And I think he felt that way just because he was in Jordan's shadow, as they kind of put it.
Yeah.
And then again, we're going to see a little bit of Jordan against Kobe, which I'm looking forward to. I think that's going to be pretty cool. And just to kind of see how the season further progresses and, go through some of those, prior championships before the 97-98 season. And it's going to be a lot of fun, I think, next Sunday. So.
Yeah. And then, going back to the finals in 91, I wrote a couple notes down about that.
Yeah.
Game 5, they were talking, they showed him in the huddle. And, Jordan saying to, and Jackson or Tyrell talking, saying, Pax is open, John Paxson.
Yeah.
And they got in that. It goes back to what we talked about a few minutes ago.
Yep.
Jordan finally bought into that concept of Phil Jackson, the triangle with Tex Winter and all that. And Phil ran it in L.A. He's got 11 rings for a reason. And that's a major part of it.
Yeah.
And he lit it up that night in Game 5 when they ended up winning that game 108-101 and winning the first ever title for the Bulls franchise.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What did you think of the push? Remember the part when Rodman shoved Pippen?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Jordan said he knew at that point, they all felt that it was over.
Yeah.
Because Pippen didn't react.
Yeah.
He didn't react. He just went on playing the game.
Yeah. I mean, you look at that footage, you see,
you imagine basketball like that now?
Oh, man. I mean, most of these guys probably wouldn't be able to play.
No.
I hate to say that, but they wouldn't be able to play. They wouldn't survive if the league was still like that.
Right.
And I think partially I am glad that the league is different because they even talked about it. Everyone hated the Pistons because it took the beauty of the game away, because then it just turned into a slugfest and, who can kick whose ass basically better. And I think there's a lot of beauty in the game of basketball that I think a lot of people, if you're not a basketball fan, you're not going to see it that way. Most people who look at the NBA now say, oh, they just flop all the time and, they're soft and they call too many fouls. And I understand that and I get it, but, you kind of have to thank the bad boys for installing that into the NBA's further rule set, because you don't want to see the superstars leave early and go out early, because of injuries and, getting beat to hell and all those kinds of things. But, I think most guys wouldn't have survived if the NBA was still like that. And I think it's pretty interesting that the Pistons kind of, with how they played, they really made the game the way it is today. So
yeah, they had a lot to do with it. I mean, it was that Detroit mentality. It was for years. I think it's been Detroit against everybody. That's a saying around these parts. If you're not from here or you never heard that, you see the T-shirts in the airport all over the place and things like that. And it's just the way they played. It's what they had. It was the makeup of their team. And, Rick Mahorn and Bill Laimbeer. And those were two guys nobody in the league wanted. They didn't want to go down the lane against those guys for anything.
Yeah.
They were tough as nails, and they were going to knock you on your ass.
Mm-hmm.
And, what you were talking about Jordan and the weight, I think they said he was at around 200 pounds.
Yeah.
And, it's when you're a world-class athlete, it's hard to put muscle on because you're burning, especially in basketball.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're burning so many calories. They said they got him up to 215. And, Jordan was able to inflict a little bit of pain back, but he certainly went through hell.
Oh, yeah.
Before he got through the Pistons and to get, the first ring. And, it's just the way the game was, and they had Rod Thorne in there.
Yeah.
And I don't remember exactly what the question was, but it was something to the effect of the rules, and he didn't really answer the question.
Yeah, no.
That's what the NBA allowed then.
Yeah.
They let that happen. They let them play that way.
Exactly.
So if you're going to let us play that way, and we feel that's our best opportunity to win, we're going to play that way.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. And to kind of go back, I know you mentioned the Scottie Pippen and how he was pretty much reactionless. You know, I mean, you look at, you know, the broadcast cameras there, you know, and the replays and showing his face. I mean, he was completely, I mean, he was, you know, he had as blank of a face as you could ever, you know, imagine, you know, after getting pushed and hit that badly. I mean, no reaction, just sat there, thought about it for a second. You know, I mean, I think, you know, later with Scott Van Pelt, you know, they showed, you know, him and Rodman got into a scuffle a little bit after that, but it wasn't anything major. That was really the only thing that happened that game physically.
Yeah.
You know, and the Pistons, they all said it. They're like, as soon as we saw Pippen get up and he just had that, you know, that blank face,
let's go,
didn't care. They were like, it's over. You know, we lost. We have no way to beat these guys anymore.
Right.
So I think that definitely was a pretty interesting thing. So,
yeah. You know me, Luke. I like numbers at times. And 84-90, the Bulls were 16-32 against the Pistons.
Yep.
From 90 to 98, they were 26-6.
Wow.
So they found a way to finally get through. And, you know, hey, I'm just glad the Pistons got a couple in there. You know, like I said, I mean, they had to go through the Celtics, they had to go through the Lakers.
Yep.
Portland was good, who Chicago beat in the first three-peat.
Yeah.
You know, later after they beat the Lakers. So, you know, the Pistons, I don't think the Pistons get enough credit for what they did in terms of breaking through. Because those Celtics, the Lakers and Celtics teams of the 80s, I mean, you can debate it. They're two of the greatest teams in that decade in the history of the game.
Definitely.
I mean, I wouldn't know where to put one. I mean, I didn't watch you know, I'm born in 70. I don't know how, all I can do is go off numbers with the Celtics in the 60s and the 50s and the 70s and all that.
Right.
But, I mean, you know, those two teams were just unbelievable. And I don't think Detroit got and still doesn't get enough credit for getting through those two teams. I just don't.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that just goes back to the handshake. I think that kind of, you can say what you will, but I think that kind of ruined their legacy. And, you know,
it didn't help.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people look at it as, oh, well, those were the guys that, you know, didn't shake Michael Jordan's hand when they beat him.
Right, and I think the outside perception was those who were not Detroit fans were like, oh, these guys are a bunch of thugs.
Yeah.
And then that, like you said, that added to it.
Yep.
Oh, well, now they're classless too.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's like, come on.
Yeah.
You know, but they had a horrible reputation. But around here, we loved them, man. And we loved seeing Jordan get knocked on his can for a few years. And, you know, you had to know eventually, you know, that he was going to get through. And, you know, again, any team has to go through somebody, most teams, I should say.
Yep.
In the history of sports, most teams that are like that, they become multiple-time champs or they, you know, they're a dynasty franchise. They've got to go through somebody. I mean, I think of football, and you can see behind me the picture of Earl Cooper in the Silverdome, and I fell in love with the 49ers as a kid because they won in the Lions Stadium and the Lions stunk. Yeah, and they had to go through the Cowboys not once but a couple times. They had to go through them later, you know, in the 90s when Steve Young was there, and you know, so every great team has to, you know, championship team has somebody they have to get through. And I think that the Bulls have to have a little bit of gratitude about the Pistons for what they did. Yeah. In the sense that without them, again, I don't think they get to where they were completely. I just don't.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You know, I think the Pistons definitely did make Jordan the player he was. He was already great before then, but, you know, obviously he just became that much better. Having to play through them and get through them and play through that, you know, those difficult, you know, games where he's getting knocked down every time he tries to go up and make a layup or dunk on somebody, you know. I mean, they even said it, you know, John Sally's like, you know, the only way we stop this guy is we take him out.
Right.
That's it. Because if he's up in the air, we got no chance.
You know, scoring. Yeah, sorry, Luke. I thought one thing, you know, and you can't cover everything in these documentaries. I think they're very well done. I really do.
They are, yeah.
But the one thing that, you know, I thought there might be a little bit more focus on was Joe Dumars. Yeah. Because Joe Dumars was unbelievable in guarding Michael Jordan. Yeah. He could shut him down, man. And that part to me, they didn't even really touch on that. No, it was more the bad boys, the bam, we're going to knock you down, shove you on your can, you know, try to break your body, whatever we can do. Yeah. But Joe Dumars, he was a major part in making Michael Jordan even better than he already was. Yeah. He really was, Luke. I mean, pull up some clips sometime and watch him defend him if you already haven't. Yeah. But he he was inside of his uniform, man, for years. He could guard.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and obviously any great one-on-one matchup will make either player better. You know, and we obviously have seen what Jordan kind of did after that, and, you know, winning 6 championships and doing, you know, so many great things, 72-10 season in 96, you know, and just being, you know, as we've said many times now, the greatest player of all time.
So. Yeah, I was just looking down at, some more of my notes. And, you know, when Jordan talked about, you know, the no handshake and his dislike and his hatred for the Pistons. And he said in some ways, beating the Pistons that first, when they finally got him, was in some ways better than a championship. Now, in some ways, I'm sure it's a very small way.
Yes.
But in some way, because you had to slay the dragon.
Yeah.
You had to kill the dragon, and it took them 3 tries to do it, but they finally did it.
Yeah, exactly. They finally got over the hump. You know, I mean, I think, you know, he said it well too. You know, we were on the hill, didn't kind of looked over it, but didn't get over it, you know, and then they finally did, and the rest is history from there. So.
You think Jordan is still upset with Pippen for the migraine? Remember that part of it?
I mean, you know, that's a tough thing. I mean, you know, you can't really control those.
No.
You know, and I mean, you know, migraines can lead to some pretty lasting health conditions.
Yeah.
You know, thankfully, Scottie Pippen, as far as I know, hasn't had to deal with anything like that.
I got a quote I wrote down about that. Keep going.
But yeah, I mean, you know, I think, you know, obviously at the time you want everybody to be at their best, and, you know, and obviously a guy like Scottie Pippen, you know, you want him to be, you know, as healthy as possible and playing as well. But, you know, I mean, he kind of said it, you know, he didn't really, you know, you don't really know because you're not in his head. You don't know what he's going through, what he's thinking, and what he's seeing. So, you know, I mean, I think, you know, that just goes back to, you know, a little bit Jordan, maybe not then, but, you know, later once Phil Jackson had kind of installed, you know, the triangle offense, and you got to, you know, include everybody in this. Everybody's got to touch the basketball.
It's a team.
Yeah, you know, I think he realized it's like how important Scottie Pippen was, you know, and then he started to realize how important Dennis Rodman was, and, you know, all these great players that he had the privilege to play with on those teams. You know how important everybody was. You know, John Paxson, and, you know, beating the Lakers that night, and him getting on a hot streak and just making every shot he took. You know, I mean, I think he started to realize it then. You know, I need these guys around me for me to be able to be great. You know, even though I know I'm great, I still need a team to help.
Absolutely.
You know, I can't go out here and drop 100 points every night and feel like myself going into the next game of a playoff series. So, you know, I definitely I'm sure now he's probably not as upset about it as he was then.
Right.
But, you know, I think everyone, you know, has to realize, you know, everyone goes through things like that every now and then, and it happens. You know, athletes are human just like we are, and, you know, sometimes you got to deal with stuff you don't want to. So
yeah, that's right. I like to hear that from the young guy. And shout out to BJ Armstrong, proud Brother Rice Warrior. Not that I went there, but it's from our neck of the woods. I have relatives that went there and played his college ball in the Big Ten at Iowa. So I found what I wrote down in regards to the migraine. John Sally said, "Look, man, he can't see. He's seeing double, and he's going to puke. He's going to vomit. What do you want him to do?"
Exactly.
So, you know, but that was the competitor that Michael Jordan was. And, you know, it's for me, no greater competitor in the history of the game.
Definitely.
There's really not. I mean, and I'm a huge Magic Johnson fan. I love Magic. From the same hometown as him. Idolized him. I was 8 years old when they won at Michigan State. Was a Laker fan, was also a Piston fan, but I love the Lakers because of Magic. And, you know, it's like, here's a superstar in the NBA from your town. I mean, how do you not fall in love with the team he plays for? And, you know, I thought that was pretty interesting. So, yeah, there was a lot of good stuff in it. You feel we covered, for the most part, all the things you wanted to get out and talk about?
Yeah, I think so. I think we talked about pretty much everything. I think we need a recap. One thing I kind of wanted to ask you, though, this is a little bit off topic. Not so much Jordan related, but era related.
Bring it.
Obviously, Magic Johnson played for Michigan State, grew up in Lansing. Free agency wasn't a huge thing back then, like it is now.
I know where you're going here.
Do you think Magic Johnson ever thought about coming to play for Detroit?
I think he did. I don't know.
I
mean, I've interviewed Magic 10 times and back in my days in Lansing, and I don't recall ever asking him that. But I think there would have been a part of him that he may have wanted to. Yeah, why not? I mean, towards the end of his career, of course, let's not forget.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long after that he announced he had HIV.
Yep.
I remember watching that in San Francisco. We were in the shipyard. I was on the USS Kiska at the time.
Yeah.
And we all gathered around like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like what a shock that, and it was months after that NBA finals.
Right.
It wasn't that long after it. And I mean, there had to have been some thought. I thought you were actually going to ask me if you ever thought about playing with Jordan.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think back then guys never thought about that kind of thing. Like, why would I go and play?
Right. You're right.
And I'm going to kind of knock Kevin Durant on this one. Why would I go and play for the enemy? And obviously I don't think Kevin Durant is ever going to – I don't think he's ever going to be able to leave that decision behind.
Probably not.
Because even being a Warriors fan, as much as I loved having him on the team, it was one of the weakest moves in NBA history for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think I can really disagree with anyone that says that. Obviously, I was standing up for him at the time, saying, oh, yeah, well, it's Kevin Durant. He can do what he wants. He's a great player, one of the best scorers to ever play in the NBA.
Yeah.
He can do what he wants. If he wants to come play for us, let him come play for us. We'll win some more championships. Sounds good to me. And I still think we should have had a three-peat, against Toronto last year. A lot of people disagree with me on that, but I think a lot of people will agree. You're playing against a broken team with a team that, we took them to 6 games.
Right.
And you're saying Kawhi Leonard's one of the best players.
Without Durant, without Klay Thompson.
Yes. I believe Game 6 that night before Klay had torn his ACL, he had 29 points. If anyone remembers the legend of Game 6 Klay against OKC a few years before that, I think we would have won that in 7 personally, even without Kevin Durant. But it's it is that was something I was definitely curious about. If Magic Johnson played in today's era, maybe he would have finished his career in Detroit.
He might have. His only team he played for was the Lakers, of course. And it's Larry Bird, same way. He only played for the Celtics.
Yep.
I mean, Jordan went and played with the Wizards, which still weird.
Yeah,
45. He played baseball.
Right.
He went down and. That part, I'm interested to see that part of this documentary.
Yeah.
When, he had the 2 years in there where Houston came in and they won.
Yeah.
They with Akeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler and all those guys. And, he went away for 18 months. I'm curious to see that part of The Last Dance when they get to it. Of course, Jerry Reinsdorf owned the Bulls and the White Sox, so you can connect the dots there, obviously. And
exactly.
down in Birmingham, playing AAA baseball, it was after his father had passed away, and those are going to be interesting, episodes to watch. And
definitely,
I think even again, not a Chicago guy, not from there, didn't know everything, about the Bulls. I don't know everything about anything, but when you're from the town, obviously you pay attention a little bit more. And
exactly.
I've learned a lot from watching these, and I think it's been really captivating television. And whether you like the Bulls, whether you hated Jordan, whether you hated the Bulls, I'm repping the Detroit hat with a fist, and I'm Detroit all the way through, man. But Michael Jordan to me is the Mount Rushmore of basketball. It's not even close. And it's good to be doing these video podcasts with Luke. He's going to be 19 in a week, and he's getting a chance to see the greatness of Jordan and what he was like. And there's a lot of people that don't like him.
Exactly.
I mean, but I've always had great respect for him, and I still think he's the greatest player that ever lived.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's just made me realize more why MJ is the greatest of all time, and I don't know if we'll ever see anyone that comes close to that. Like I said, I think Kobe is the most comparable player we've ever had.
I agree.
Michael's even said, the only guy that could beat me one-on-one is Kobe Bryant because he knows all my moves.
Right.
But I think if Kobe would have won that 6th ring, if that ever would have happened, then I think that debate gets even more harder to choose.
Yeah.
But you have to think, again, Phil Jackson coached both of those guys.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Phil Jackson, Kobe wouldn't be the guy he was. And I think if it wasn't for Phil Jackson, Michael Jordan wouldn't have had the dynasty and the legacy that he has.
All right.
So, but those are my final thoughts.
I got a birthday idea for you now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Birthday's in a week.
Yeah.
May the 4th be with you.
Yes. But yeah, so looking forward to episodes 5 and 6 next Sunday. I think those are going to be great. Going to get more into the media and getting mixed in with
oh boy,
split the team up a little bit, 97 and 98.
Yeah.
We'll see some more. Obviously, some more stuff about the championships after 91, and kind of what you touched on with him, quitting and taking a break and not want to play basketball, and definitely will be interesting to see where we go from here. So
it will. Why don't you bring us home and we'll wrap up this edition.
Yeah. So once again, thank you for joining us for the latest edition of the No Holden Back podcast. Once again, my name is Luke Holden with my dad, Ben Holden. Been great talking about The Last Dance. Hopefully you enjoy the episodes. Be sure to check us out anywhere on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, of course, and any other place that you can find a podcast. It's been a
Twitter,
lot of
Facebook, we're all over the place.
It's been a lot of fun. We've enjoyed it a ton. And once again, thanks for listening. And make sure you're staying safe, stay healthy. And thank you to all of our healthcare workers for doing the great things you are doing right now. And that's all I got for us.
So. All right. That's it. We'll see you next time for another edition of No Holding Back.